Hi, I'm Ben,
And I'm Lucas.
and we are two aspiring filmmakers making unnecessary commentary on famous movies.
Each week, we will randomly select a film to analyze, discuss, and review.
We will select the film at the end of each podcast, so you will have ample time to watch the movie before the next episode.
We are slightly qualified film students.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome back.
Welcome to another episode of Slightly Qualified Film Students. This week, we're doing our 29th film, Bottle Rocket.
Bottle Rocket.
The Wes Anderson film. It's his first feature-length film, starring Luke and Owen Wilson and Andrew Wilson. All three of the Wilson brothers here today. And I'd say it's a pretty good debut film. You look at some famous directors' debuts. You got Res Dogs from Tarantino. You got like Boogie Nights from Paul Thomas Anderson, and for Wes Anderson, it's Bottle Rocket, which is adapted from his short film from a few years before this. It's a pretty obscure film, not very popular at the box office, nor really anywhere. But yeah, I saw this film the first time like 2 years ago on DVD, and I kind of fell in love with it. I don't know why, but something about Luke Wilson and Owen Wilson's characters it's very charming, and it's a very well written script. It's very funny. Overall, pretty solid like crime/comedy film, although it's not really a crime film. And I'd recommend any Wes Anderson fan to check it out. You gotta do a deep dive of his catalog. It's probably hard to
where
find.
Does this stand? This is your 12th all-time favorite film, according to your Letterboxd.
Yeah.
And this was my first time watching it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was very entertaining, and I got some good laughs out of it.
Yeah, for sure. There's some pretty iconic lines in here, and I'm honestly pretty impressed with it for a first feature film. I mean, a lot of directors take some time. I mean, Wes Anderson, you can tell with this film that he hadn't fully developed his style at all. And really, I think the only thing that's kind of stayed true from the start is his very childish characters. In this film, it's Dignan. Is I guess the best example. He's adult characters that, they're not acting under the rules of the adult world, really. And yeah, just like the whimsical nature of it, it's not quite as like fairy tale-esque as other Wes Anderson films, but you can still catch that kind of vibe. About these three guys with a dream. They want to rob stuff, but they're out here robbing like a bookstore and a cold storage factory. It's like a spoof crime film.
Yeah.
I have the plot synopsis here for those who haven't seen it. A group of friends hatches a plan to pull off a simple robbery and go on the run. However, their ensuing escapade turns out to be far from what anyone expected. Yeah, so they rob the bookstore, they have to run away, and then chaos ensues. Things do not go according to plan pretty much ever for Dignan. And it just leads to some funny situations. This film is not Wes Anderson's best, but I don't know. To me, this is one of the more funny and charming Wes Anderson films out there, and definitely one of the more entertaining ones compared to something like Moonrise Kingdom. This film's pretty fast paced.
Yeah. You can definitely see his style emerging, especially in the characters, like you were saying, but also in his color. He uses a very simple triadic color palette in this film with red, blue, and yellow specifically. with Luke Wilson's character always wearing that red sweater or, the yellow jumpsuits,
Yeah.
etc. He still is using those vivid colors and costumes. And yeah, you can see his style, what we are going to eventually see a little bit in Rushmore, but Royal Tenenbaums especially, and then kind of takes off. You can see it starting to emerge, but it's mostly in the writing style and a little bit in the production design. But most of this film does just feel like an indie film. The cinematography is very simplistic, but yeah, it's a fun watch.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't have the largest budget in the world. $5 million for your first, or sorry, $7 million.
That's a pretty
guess
decent budget.
That's a big budget for your first
And also,
film.
I don't know if this film needed
and I mean,
that much money.
Yeah, no. Because the way he got the funds was he made a short film. I think it's 12 minutes long, maybe 14. It's somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
About the same premise, black and white short, and he submitted it to a Sundance short film contest, I guess, and it won. So he got funds to to extend it and make the full feature length. So I guess the budget, I think he put it to pretty good use. It is an indie film, but they do have some nice locations, like the actual cold storage packing thing, and you can tell that they paid. They have extras in like the party scene, the bar,
Right. Yeah.
Stuff like that. They got a restaurant, so it's got a decently bigger budget production feel than say something like Res Dogs, where they spend, pretty much the entire film.
Sure. Right.
In the warehouse.
But let's just remember that Silence had a $40 million budget.
Yeah. And Silence is one of the most visually stunning films
Yes.
of all time. Yeah. This film actually, it's got pretty good reviews from critics, and I guess that's why he got the budget to do Rushmore. It's got an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 7 on IMDb. It just really didn't take off with audiences. I read an interview where Owen Wilson said that, Bottle Rocket was pretty much a commercial failure, and so Owen Wilson was gonna join the Marines because he thought he wouldn't be able to make it as an actor because Bottle Rocket flopped. So he was like, oh, damn. Yeah. I gotta go join the military now.
Okay, let's move into standout scenes.
What's your standout scene? Because I don't want to steal yours.
Okay. I have a couple, I think, that really stood out to me. I think my main one is actually a scene that is in the original short film, which I also watched, and that is the scene where they are trying to plan out their heist together. And
the bookstore
Bob
robbery
is just fiddling around with the gun the entire time.
Yeah.
And Digman is just losing it and cannot handle it, and you can see his control freak nature, and Anthony is like trying to calm him down, and Bob is just being sarcastic and playing with a gun, and it's just such a funny scene with great dialogue. And yeah, I watched the short film after I watched this, and that scene is also in the short. It's not as long, but it's also in there, and I just think it's a really nice scene. That's really fun. But I also really love the bookstore robbery. The
bookstore robbery
was hilarious. Yeah, a lot of really great funny scenes in this film.
My standout scene, I think I'm going to go with the cold storage robbery at the end. To me, that's always been the funniest part of this film. Watching this heist that's almost like a distraction heist for Mr. Henry robbing Bob's house. But they're doing this heist, and everything that could go wrong goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Kumar doesn't know how to open a safe.
Yeah.
and he was like the main guy, and he's just like, I can't do it, man, I can't do it. The people come back from lunch who work there, and Owen Wilson's like, you guys are always on lunch. Not always. Yes, always. And then they're trying to put their masks on. Bob shoots his gun off. Applejack has a heart attack. The smoke grenade goes off. Then the fire alarm goes off. And eventually Dignan runs from the police, and he gets brutalized and arrested, which is just a solid ending to this film. I mean, it's not the real ending, but that scene always cracks me up the most. I guess it's like the climax. It's just ridiculous, and I love it in its ridiculousness. But there's a lot of standout scenes. Another really underrated scene is the bar scene, where the Mexican guy's like, hey, you're in the army? And he's like, nah, man, I just have short hair. And then they fight over pool. A lot of great scenes in this film. It's pretty compact, so a lot of the scenes feel pretty purposeful, the good energy. No audience questions this week, unfortunately. I think it's just too obscure of a film.
Well, let's take a quick break, and then we'll hop into the actual review. Okay, we're back.
Yeah.
Hopping into story and originality out of 10. For me, I think this is a very original screenplay.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen the dynamic of like bad robbers or amateur robbers before, but I think that this film takes a different twist to it, and with the added benefit of Wes Anderson style dialogue, and it being his first film, it's very refreshing. Especially, I can imagine with it coming out in 96, there wasn't a lot like this. Wes Anderson wasn't a known name. So it gets a lot of points for me originality wise. I think the story is fun. It's not extremely insane, or it's a pretty basic storyline, but I still like it, and it's fun, and it's entertaining.
Mm-hmm. It's I think that it's a very solid, I guess, crime story. You have pretty unique characters in the genre, with Dignan and Bob and all these people who are really just operating under the mastermind, the dreamer Dignan, who he wants to be a criminal, and then he just kind of gets his friends to go along with it. It almost feels like a group of kids who like when you're a kid and you pretend to be stuff. It almost feels like kids pretending to be robbers, except it's real. It's got that fairy tale aesthetic that Wes Anderson is so well known for. And I don't think it's an incredible story. It's very simple. It's not too emotional. But I think overall it's a very solid story. Gets some laughs. It's not too long. It's not too intricate. It knows what it is. And very solid story.
I gave it 9 out of 10.
Same here. 9% out of 10. Interesting plot. Great story.
Okay, beginning out of 5.
I really like this beginning.
I like the opening scene.
Yeah.
The opening scene is really funny, and it sets up Dignan's character right away.
Yeah.
We know who he is. We know what his personality's like. We know all of his like crazy brain, what he's thinking, and we also understand that Anthony is kind of like his caretaker to a certain extent. He's kind of there to just like reel him in, but also have fun with him. And it's just a really funny scene, how the entire opening sequence plays out. It slows down a bit afterwards, but I think for an opening scene, it's very solid, very funny. And it hooked me right away.
I think it's great, well written setup. You got Anthony leaving. He's allowed to leave. It's a volunteer, I guess, mental health, like mental hospital. Not really an asylum. I guess it's like almost more like rehab in a way.
Yeah.
And he can voluntarily leave, but obviously Dignan wants to make it an escape because that's just who he is. And so, he gets let down and he's like, oh, nice, you bribed the janitor. And then it leads into the bus scene, which I also think is great development, very funny. And yeah, overall, it's a very entertaining beginning, gets right into it. There's almost no logos in this film, like pretty much, 20 seconds in and you're already fully engulfed. And I really appreciate that. I don't think it's my favorite beginning of all time, but I think that it's very funny and well-written setup with a great fast pace.
I agree.
Yeah.
I gave it a 4 out of 5.
I gave it a 4% out of 5 too. Yeah, let's move into ending. Out of 5%. This ending has like a kind of a special place in my heart. I personally really enjoy this last scene with Bob and Anthony visiting Dignan in jail. I think it doesn't overstay its welcome. I don't think it's too cheesy. I like that he has one last, joke where he's like, all right, you have 30 seconds, take out the guards and meet me by the gate.
Yeah.
And then they're super like, oh, what the hell? And they're scared. And then he says, isn't it funny that you were in the nut house and now I'm in jail? Which is solid final line of a film. Ends on a high note. And yeah, to me, this is a very solid ending. It brings a great end to Dignan's character, to Bob's and Anthony's as well. And yeah, I think it's a very, very solid ending.
I was just a little confused. Can you actually just walk up to a jail and be like, yo, I'm going to go chill with my friend with some burgers?
I mean, I think, well, he has...
Because they just, go for a walk. They just go for a walk
it's
and
like,
eat some burgers.
they're in the yard, obviously. He's only... I don't think it's a very high security prison, because he's only in there for 2 years for...
I guess.
A burglary charge. I'm not sure if you can do that. Probably not. But they do.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a pretty solid ending. I like that he ends up in jail. It's kind of like it makes sense for his character. The climax into it is very funny, as you were already talking about. It's very intense, but just lots of laughter. Yeah, and then, I didn't think the final scene was mind-blowing by any means, but I think it's a solid ending. It ends, pretty quickly. It doesn't overstay its welcome. And yeah, it's like the movie's an hour and 27 minutes or something. So you get the bulk of it and it just kind of ends, and I like that. I think it's a solid ending. I give it a 4 out of 5.
I gave it the 4% as well. Yeah, super, super solid ending. Now we're moving into screenplay and dialogue. I personally really love the screenplay and dialogue in this film. I really love the kind of... It almost sounds like it's being improvised dialogue. There's a lot of filler words, a lot of pauses. And I think that it just really fits these very quirky characters and the very, odd situation that they're in. I love their interactions, and I think the dialogue is really carries this film as it does for a lot of indie films, and I think it carries it really well in this film. And there's a lot of greatly written scenes. The country club scene is written excellently, where they're all having lunch. I mean, just so many conversations in this film feel very natural. But with a little quirky edge that is funny enough to keep you entertained. I just love the dynamic between Anthony and Dignan. It's such a love-hate relationship. Anthony's always annoyed at Dignan's antics, but at the same time he's such a likable guy that he just keeps coming back. I don't necessarily think that all the scenes are perfect or the structure is perfect, but I really like this screenplay and dialogue, and to me, this is one of the main reasons why this film is so high on my list. I feel like these characters are much more relatable, and therefore like more entertaining than in some Wes Anderson films, which kind of puts this above them for me. Uh, because it's kind of like that adult fairy tale, but also with like real life characters. Like the Grand Budapest Hotel is kind of has that style, but also it's these rich characters in Europe. Like this film feels very rooted in what could actually happen, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most realistic Wes Anderson films. And it's also, he hasn't fully developed his style yet. And honestly, I felt more drawn to this film than most Wes Anderson films, just because I personally prefer this kind of style of filmmaking. I prefer films that are a bit more realistic. I mean, there's exceptions. Like, I really love The Grand Budapest Hotel, just because, I don't know, I just really love that film. But for the most part, I prefer Wes Anderson's earlier works just because I feel like they're a bit more easier for me to get invested in. I think that's the biggest thing, is I find when I watch films like Moonrise Kingdom, Royal Tenenbaums, I don't get as invested in the characters because they feel fake, I guess you could say. They feel like characters, and how it's filmed, it feels like you're watching a movie. And when I watch a film, I want to be engaged, and I want to feel empathy for all the characters and stuff like that. And I felt that with Bottle Rocket. I feel that with Rushmore also. And I think a lot of that has to do with the writing and the style. But the biggest thing for me with this screenplay and dialogue is the dialogue. I think the dialogue is fantastic, really well written, very quirky and funny. And it also feels very relaxed. It doesn't feel too deadpan like Wes Anderson grows to, really develop. It feels very natural and realistic, and almost feels improvised sometimes. I mean, for me, the only problem I have with the screenplay is I wish that they had either kept all the motel stuff with the what's her name? Inez. Either they keep all of that, but then they use her character later in the film to justify all of the character development being given to her, or just, give her a bit less character development if you're not going to use her in the later half of the film.
Yeah.
I just felt like they spent a little bit too much time at the motel when you could have got some, fun, quirky scenes in, because she just wasn't that vital to the story as a whole. But overall, solid dialogue. I gave it 7 out of 8.
Yeah, I have a super big soft spot for this film, so I had to exercise my bias a little bit. I gave it full marks. I gave it the 8%. I do agree with you that they spend a little too much time at the hotel, but I really just love this screenplay and dialogue, and it stands out as one of my favorites from Wes, and it's really what carries this film for me. With that being said, though, let's move on to soundtrack, and I'm a huge fan of this soundtrack right here. Uses some bangers. You got Love Alone Again or by Love. A lot of these songs, they're on my playlist. You got a mix between, those classic rock songs with some Spanish instrumental guitars for while they're at the hotel. I don't know. I love pretty much all of Wes Anderson's soundtracks. I think he always nails it out of the park. He's got great music taste. I'm a huge fan of the soundtrack.
I thought the soundtrack was really fun. The only issue I have with the soundtrack is one of the theme songs in the film, which is actually used in their short film. I get it, they want to carry it on, but it does sound a little royalty free. Because they did use it in their short film. That's my only issue. I genuinely enjoyed a lot of the songs that were playing throughout. It's very Wes Anderson vibes. He has a very clear understanding of what his score is going to sound like for, the rest of his filmography. Yeah, I mean, would I listen to it? Probably not, but I think it worked really well with the film. I think the song selection was fantastic, and yeah, gave it 6 out of 7.
Yeah, I think that Mark Mothersbaugh's music, and he does all the non-purchased soundtrack for this film. He does the royalty-free sounding stuff. His style, he's a musical artist. He's in the band Devo, but he also scores pretty much all the Wes Anderson movies. He did Life Aquatic. He does Rushmore. His style, it wasn't really fully developed here, but also this film uses 2000 Man by the Rolling Stones, and I love that song. I gave it 7% because 3 of these songs are on my playlist, and that's, one of the characteristics we're looking at. They're just some bangers. Solid soundtrack, full marks. Production design, costumes and set.
There's not a lot of production design.
Yeah.
Very minimal.
It's
solid.
It's
I
okay.
do like the costumes in this film. I think for an independent film, they did spend a lot of time on the costumes, thinking of color and thinking of quirkiness, and thinking about the characters that wear them.
Yeah.
I think Anthony, Bob, and I can never pronounce his name.
Dignan. Yeah, that's
Owen
weird.
Wilson. Yeah, Dignan. They all have very specified costumes for their characters. And I like just the added stuff that they've kind of done with their masks, with the tape on the nose for the book robbery.
Yeah.
There's little things like that.
Why'd you put the tape on your
extra
nose?
Attention to
Exactly.
detail. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can't give this major marks because there is very minimal production design, but I think set decoration is pretty okay. And yeah, I think costumes are solid. And yeah, I gave it a 4 out of 6.
Yeah, I gave it the 4% too. Not very much production design in this film. They're on location a lot. And yeah, I like the costumes, but they don't switch it up too much. Dignan's got an iconic costume to me. Same with Luke Wilson as Anthony. And, you got some funnier ones, like Mr. Henry sparring his, Japanese advisor, and he's wearing tighty-whities. Some weird stuff like that. But, overall, 4%. They clearly spent their budget in other places other than production design. Let's move into location selection, which I think is also pretty solid. This film is pretty much entirely shot in their hometown of Dallas-Fort Worth. And I think that there's some solid locations here. Nothing too beautiful, but I think that it's a very nice motel in particular that they picked. It feels very open air with the big field behind it. I like that they rob a cold packing factory because that's just such a thing that people would never rob. It's very weird. They got the nice location of the country club, the bar. They're pretty nice locations for a low budget film. I just felt like overall pretty solid location selection. Nothing too beautiful, but overall pretty nice.
Yeah, I agree. I think the location selection was fine. I didn't think any really popped out to me. I mean, there were a couple I liked. I liked the hall that they chose for the kind of party scene, banquet scene. I thought that was nice.
Yeah.
The bar that they go to, where Dignan gets in the fight at the pool table, is pretty solid. Yeah, the motel's okay. I mean, it's kind of just your every other motel, but I do like that there is that field in the background that they're able to play around with. But yeah, overall, it does feel like they're just kind of, walking around streets and just shooting some stuff. I thought it was above average, but I also didn't think it was anything stellar. I also gave it 4 out of 6.
Yeah, I gave it the 5% out of 6. It's a low 5. But I do really like that motel. To me, it's a pretty cool location that they were able to find. But yeah, overall, nothing really spectacular. Low 5. It's a bit underwhelming for an indie film because normally they're the ones who have the craziest locations, other than something like Silence.
Yeah.
Yeah, with that being said, we'll take a quick break and then we'll hop into the second half of the review. All right.
Okay, we're
let's
back.
Hop into the second half of the review, starting
yes.
off with cinematography out of 10%. I think that I have kind of mixed feelings about the cinematography. I do like that they use quite a lot of tracking shots and camera movement in this film. Which is something that is very, Wes Anderson. He likes to have camera movement. But at the same time, this film's not very beautiful. It doesn't have the very stylized framing that we've come to know and love from Wes Anderson. And part of that reason might be because he hadn't started working with Robert Yeoman. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Who has shot pretty much every single Wes Anderson film since Rushmore. He didn't do this film, and yeah, the cinematography feels slightly lackluster at points, but at the same time, I do really like some of the shots where they have, the camera on a crane, like they'll track someone on the upper level of the motel, and then it'll, come down and continue following them. Just simple stuff like that, but I appreciate that they were, still caring about camera movement in an indie film. And yeah, I think overall, I like the style, I like the feel of the cinematography. It doesn't have that bokeh, it doesn't quite have that beautiful cinematic edge that a lot of films have. It looks very 90s indie kind of feel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's awful. I think it's okay for this film, but I also feel like it's pretty... it's just not that exciting. I think that there are some cool camera movements, I agree. I like the tracking shots, but for the most part, yeah, there's like no depth of field. It's very just basic MCUs most of the time. And yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of other films that are out there that have had much less of a budget, that have pulled off some much more beautiful looking cinematography, even from like the 90s. Like if we look at Trainspotting or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's solid, but it's a little underwhelming. I still think that the effort that he put in to move the camera, to actually spend some time doing some of those shots, I'm giving it credit for, and I'm boosting its score up a bit. But it's not quite in the same caliber as most of the other films we've done so far. But I still gave it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I was wrong, actually. Robert Yeoman did shoot this film. He's shot every single Wes Anderson film. I gave it a 7% as well. Even my bias can't defend this film's cinematography, unfortunately. Let's move on to editing. With that being said, 8% here. I like the editing in this film. There's a couple of continuity errors throughout this film. I think the only really truly notable one that I always noticed is in the meat packing, or like the cold packing robbery. Anthony runs over to the lift when he's told to check who's coming, and then they like cut to a different shot of him there blatantly because they didn't like film the elevator coming up. I don't know why. It's in the final cut. But really, aside from that, I think that this film has great comedic timing. I like how they'll end a conversation with someone about to say something and then cut to like them saying it in the car or something, like continuing a conversation but in a new scene. I really like the way that they cut between scenes there. Uh, and yeah, I think overall, very, very solid editing. Um, it's not incredible, but I do appreciate the good comedic timing. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the editing is pretty solid. It does what it needs to do. I do think some of the cuts are quite funny. Um, there's a little bit of sound issues once in a while. I think the main reason for that is that they're shooting on a lot of streets that they clearly didn't have closed off, so you're getting a lot of traffic noises in the background that are truly, difficult to edit. We've had to do that many times trying to edit around continuity traffic noises in the background. It's hard to do, but it does cause some jumps in the edit. Yeah, there's a couple continuity errors also. There's another one at the start I noticed where they're like jumping the fence and then it just cuts to them like on the ground and it's kind of a sudden cut. But I think the editing was fine, and I think it makes up for it a bit in the comedic timing it uses, and it does. I think the cuts are actually smart and show that the editor knew what they were doing. They just, maybe didn't have all the shots necessary to make some scenes as smooth as possible. Yeah, but I still think it's solid enough, and I think they did a good job that I gave it that 6 out of 8.
Yeah, I gave it a 6% as well. Yeah, solid comedic timing. You can tell that they had a vision. Didn't maybe have the budget to have a very well put together film, I guess, technically speaking, but I like what they did with it. Now, acting out of 10%, I really like the performances in this film. I think that Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson do a great job with what they're given, especially Owen Wilson. I think he's great as Dignan. And this is another thing that I really appreciate about this is pretty much all the leads' first time in a feature-length film. The guy who plays Bob, Robert Musgrave, this is his pretty much only film he's ever done. First and only. Luke Wilson, Owen Wilson, it's their first film. Really just a lot of completely unheard of actors at the time. Andrew Wilson had never been in anything. Kumar Palana had never been in anything. James Caan, who plays Mr. Henry, he was really the only experienced actor that they had for this, and he plays a very minor role, but obviously, he's Sonny Corleone in The Godfather. He's a pretty well-known actor. And he does what he needs to do in this film. It's a very small role, but I think it's honestly a pretty funny reference almost to have, Sonny Corleone as the gangster criminal in this film.
Right.
Yeah, I think that the acting here, I really like all the performances, and I'm pretty impressed with the fact that this is most of their first times in a feature-length film.
Yeah, I agree. I think the performances are solid. I don't think that there's anything fantastic about what anyone really does, but also there's no bad acting by any means. I think that everyone gives a good performance. Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything you said. I don't think it's warranted that 9 because of just the other films I've given 9 to, but I think it is good enough to get that 8 out of 10. There just really isn't any moments to really show off the acting in this film. Yeah, you've got good character actors and Owen Wilson does a good job, but at the end of the day, there's just nothing really there to show me those acting skills,
Yeah, I gave it the 8%. Yeah, I agree with you. There's not really any dramatic moments, and while comedic acting is challenging, this film it's not the most impressive. It doesn't really show off any acting chops, but yeah, no real bad performances either. Let's move into entertainment value out of 10%. I think that this is a very, very entertaining film. I've watched it 5 or 6 times now, I want to say. Probably 5. And yeah, to me, it's one of my favorites that we've watched so far. So, obviously, it's very entertaining to me. Rewatchability is pretty high just for the funny jokes, because you know
Right.
there's not any big plot moments that you wish you could see again for the first time. And yeah, overall, I think it's a very entertaining, funny film. Uh, Not really for the action, more for just the charming wittiness of the dialogue. And yeah,
Yeah, I found this film very entertaining. It was a very fun watch. It's nice and short, so it's an easy one. I can definitely see just throwing on. Um, yeah, I mean the only thing for me for entertainment value is just that little lag time at the motel. I feel like goes on a little too long, but you know, there's still some good funny jokes in those moments that keep it entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me it's a solid 9 out of 10.
yeah, I gave it a 9.5 out of 10 because
Ooh, pulling in
I-
the half.
I feel like it's more entertaining than a lot of the films I've given nines, just because it hits different. It hits me in a way that a lot of the nines don't. But at the
Sure.
same time, I'm not giving it the full 10% because there are films out there that are just wildly entertaining compared to even this. So yeah, I gave it the uncharacteristic half mark, which I think has only been given when Lucas gave 14.5 to Children of Men.
Yeah.
But I'm busting it out here.
You know what? That's fair.
Yeah.
We're still holding off on that 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I didn't want
It'll
to do it.
happen.
And
It
yeah,
will happen.
it will. Overall technical achievement out of 15.
Overall technical achievement.
This film, it's not very impressive technically.
No.
I think that I'm giving it a 12%, and the only thing holding it up to that standard is
Whoa.
the editing for me. I gave the cinematography a 7, editing a 6, and I think it's pretty on par technically with some of the other 12s. And
Okay.
yeah, I gave it the 12%.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I gave Manchester by the Sea a 12%, and I don't think this is of the same caliber on a technical level.
Fair.
So I give it the 11. I think it's still, it's solid. It gets the job done, but, continuity errors, cinematography isn't all that impressive. And, yeah, looking at the other 12s I've given, Manchester by the Sea, Trainspotting, some other ones, it's not quite there. So, yeah, solid 11 for me. Yeah.
We'll take a quick
That's
break
the
and then
review.
tally up our final scores.
Okay, we are back.
All right.
Nice and quick.
Tallied up the final
podcast
scores.
this week. Nice and quick.
It's a very simple film.
Yes, it is.
Not much to be analyzed.
So, 29th film, Ball Rocket. Oh, next week is our 30th film. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's a good
Um,
milestone.
Big milestone there. So,
Yeah.
what did you give Bottle Rocket, Ben?
Bottle Rocket, one of my favorite movies of all time. Is it technically good? Not really. Is the production design good? Not really. But still, it manages to charm my heart. I give it an 83.5%.
83.5.
Yeah. I feel like, it's fine that this film, it's not the most incredible masterpiece, but it's just a fun watch. I really enjoy watching it every time I see it. Yeah, I would recommend it to anyone who's into Wes Anderson. I think it's, good to check out every director's early stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's, if you like Wes Anderson, you like that dialogue style, you'll find it enjoyable.
Yeah, I agree. I gave Bottle Rocket a 79%. Pretty solid. I mean,
Yeah, very
Yeah.
solid. Better than The Life Aquatic.
yes, I did enjoy this more than The Life Aquatic, I will say. I know it's your favorite film of all time, but yeah, I did enjoy this one a bit more.
Technically now, Brazil, I made the decision that
Yes,
Brazil is my
yes,
favorite.
yes.
over Life Aquatic.
Which I gave an awful grade to, let me just say. But I went back and looked at my grading for Brazil, and I disagree with a lot of it. And I think I was just very hard on films when we first started, now that I look at it.
Yeah.
Like, if you look, Parasite got an 84. I mean, I was pretty tough in the early days. Brazil deserved
And I
better.
I was way too nice. Brazil,
That's true.
well, I mean...
Brazil
I
ended up in an
gave
okay
Brazil,
place. With
Yeah,
average.
I gave Brazil a very high rating, but at the same time, I was just trying to, like, boost it in any way I could because it is my favorite. But now I've realized I can rate a film at 83% and still put it in my top 15.
Yes.
Because I don't care.
Exactly.
I can do whatever I want.
So what does that average out to?
It averages to... Man, school is out, and I can no longer do math.
Pull out that calculator.
Yeah, I gotta pull out a calculator here, because we got decimals involved. Alright, that divided by 2. We got 81.25%, which puts it above Enemy and behind Atonement. 81.25%. It's a pretty solid place. It's in the bottom third of films we've done so far, but it's a fairly indie film. It doesn't have the beautiful and deep meaning as a lot of our higher up films do.
And I don't know how Enemy is so low. we really ripped on
Yeah,
Enemy.
I love Enemy.
We really
I
ripped
really
on
love
Enemy.
Enemy.
Yeah.
I think I gave the ending to Enemy like a 3 because I was like, it's too confusing.
Yeah, you did. I remember that. I gave it full marks. You were like, no, bro, it's too confusing.
Wait, and then I think I didn't do this. I did the screenplay dirty too because I said it was too confusing. But then I rewatched Enemy recently, and I mean I loved it too when we first saw it. I think the cinematography in Enemy is excellent, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I put it in my top 30 films of all time now after a rewatch because it's like pretentious, and it's like a thriller. It's good.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Well, I got the wheel pulled up. I am ready to spin.
Nice. Let's do it.
Any hopes this week, Ben?
I'm kind of hoping for... Let me see what we got on the wheel. I think I kind of want to rewatch... I want to rewatch something. I want to rewatch Fear and Loathing. I want to get Fear and Loathing. Something funny. Maybe I'd be down to rewatch Arrival too. I'd be down to rewatch Shoplifters or The Big Lebowski.
The Big Lebowski.
I'm looking for a rewatch. Something that I saw a while ago that I need to rewatch. I want to rewatch a classic.
That's fair.
Let's see what we get.
Okay. Well, pull up screen recording. Okay. And we are spinning in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Oh, cool. Cool.
All right, I'm hyped.
We have landed on Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Whoa.
Our first
God.
animated film.
Oh, no.
So Ben and I will have to rethink our grading system for this one because it's animated.
How much? I mean, well, we can still do story. We could still do beginning and ending. We could still do screenplay and soundtrack.
Yep.
But then production design, location selection, and cinematography are the 3 we gotta change.
Yes. Yeah.
Because editing we can still do. Well...
yeah, we can still do editing. Acting can still be done for voice acting.
Voice acting, yeah. Entertainment value. Oh, this is gonna score high on entertainment value, man. This film is...
I'm excited. I watched this film for the first time, over Christmas break, and I really loved it. This was a requested film, So
Yeah.
there you go. Requested films do
Whoever-
get picked.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm excited to rewatch this. Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be really fun.
It's our first Nicolas Cage movie.
First Nick Cage.
Nick Cage is in it.
Yes. Yeah, first animated films. It's going to be a lot of firsts. And this is our 30th film of the podcast. And,
Should be hyped.
you know, kind of cool that we're getting our first animated film for our 30th film. Yeah. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Bottle Rocket.
Bottle Rocket.
And yeah, next Monday we will
see you
be
next week.
coming at you with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
All right. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Slightly Qualified Film Students.
Make sure to tune in next week for a new film discussion and review.
Our theme song is Slightly Sexy by Thompson Springs.
Make sure to subscribe and leave us a like.
Send us feedback and comments as well as your thoughts on the film. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at S_Q_F_S.
If you would like to send us a question or a comment for next week's episode, you can email us at sqfilmstudents@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.